Greetings, infinite blessings, and welcome to another episode of Modern Day Mindfulness. So leading on from last week's episode, talking about depression, what depression is, what anxiety is, and my journey, my experience with it, my journey through it, traveling through the darkness to emerge into the light upon the other side. As I said, this week, instead of actually starting the 5 steps to freedom, which we will start next week, this week we're going to talk about the ego. Everything required to understand what the ego is, to break free from its desire for control, to break free from its limitations, to break free from fear in general. And fear was actually the topic of conversation for the first episode. So the ego is your sense of self, is your sense of physical, separate self. The body is the ego. The mind is linked into the ego but has access to the subconscious mind and to the superconsciousness, which is outside of the ego. The ego likes to control, it likes to understand, it likes to defy anything which it does not understand through a requirement to always appear or feel superior. It is the reason for all sorts of separation and any and all forms of isms, racism, sexism, whatever form of ism is due to the ego's incapability of understanding something separate or different to it. My ego views me as English, a certain height, a certain appearance, a certain weight, and fair-skinned. So if it doesn't understand the reason somebody else behaves in the way they do, due to their environmental stimuli, due to their upbringing, due to the experiences they have had and the programs that they run, then it will try to actually wrong them, condemn them, and do everything it can to destroy them if it feels inferior to them. The ego, its main role is to protect. It's there to protect you. What it doesn't understand, what it is fearful of, it will condemn to keep you safe. If there is something potentially fearful, such as heights, such as small spaces, such as any form of phobia in truth, then that is linked into the ego. And it brings in belief systems, it installs programs. View yourself, your human self, as a computer. You are born blank and you have various programs installed upon you. The ego then believes these programs to be factual, to be truthful. The way that you view the world is dependent on the lenses of perception that you have gained through all the experiences that you have had thus far. So I'd like to take this opportunity just to let you know that everything that you have experienced in the past, if you are unaware that there was any alternative, then it is not your fault. But it is up to you now, after watching this video, after watching the series of videos that we are creating and releasing weekly, with Modern Day Mindfulness being a new installment, the 3rd weekly episode on the Cosmic Surfer YouTube channel. So if you have not yet done so, please ensure that you have subscribed to the channel. United We Stand will be every Thursday and will be either the radio show, the podcast, or the lives that we do, the live healings, or perhaps even a interview, a live one-on-one, or something which is going to be very educational and expansive. And then the Saturday episodes are Together We Rise. And that is all about spiritual based understanding, the depths of knowledge and wisdom that I am able to channel through me to you. As united we stand and together we rise. So very quickly, as an indication of how far I have personally come, separated from my ego, and if you are at a starting point upon your journey of self-discovery and actually taking back ownership of every thought that you have, every feeling that you then embody and sense and experience in your life as a whole, then I strongly guide you towards reading the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, because that was what started me upon my journey and gave me back an understanding that this is my life. These are my emotions. They are felt within me, therefore I have control over them to a certain degree. Cosmic Surfer, surfing the waves of existence together, now and forever. I was shown it as a single droplet of water. We are each individual, separate droplets of water that together collectively make up the ocean of existence. We can enjoy the ocean, we can enjoy riding the crest of those waves, but we cannot actually control the direction the current flows within. That is a collective force. And that at the moment is what is being done collectively, globally, is to use what we have against us, to use egoic fear and a desire to stay separate to actually control us. I know what they're doing, but by focusing upon it, we grow it. As whatever we focus upon, we grow. Do not focus on the negatives. Do not focus on the repression. Do not focus on the control or the appearance of a lack of freedom, because everything is a choice. And the ego will always try to actually pretend otherwise to a degree. You are either a creator or a victim. And there is a fine balance between being victimhood is all ego. It is a poor me ego. Being a creator, if you are creating something for the greater good of humanity, then that is outside of ego. If you are creating something for the self, then that is egoic. And it is finding that fine balance between the two. So for those of you that have been connected to me for a while, about 3 months ago, I was gifted the opportunity to host my own radio show. And obviously my ego loved this. Oh, I'm a radio presenter. I've got my own show. I'm the only presenter on the channel. Oh, look at me. Look at me, Mr. Ego. I gave and gave and gave. And I was promised, as I said to the person in charge of actually operating and doing the logistics of it all, I was promised X, Y, and Z. Yet we hadn't even got to B. If you are continuously feeding something that you know is not going to grow, then you are not most mindfully or beneficially using that time and energy. You are infinite. You have an infinite source of abundant energy, an infinite source of everything, an infinite source of wisdom that you can channel through you once you actually break past that barrier of separation and control that the ego places up. I've pulled out of the radio show for 2 reasons. Because I said, either deliver what you're going to do and do it this week, not having promised last week, the week before, the week before, the week before, the week before, and coming up with all sorts of excuses as why not to, which is very poor me ego. I gave an ultimatum, and the response was, we feel it most beneficial to actually focus what we're doing solely on DJs as opposed to having the presenter element. I knew this was coming, and it also gives me freedom of choice, freedom of expression, freedom of control, artistic ownership, as I am very deep in my teachings, my expressions, my information, or the system that I deliver it in. It is very deep, and it is too much for a lot of people because it is very spiritually based. And to say that you are the creator of all there is, you create your life. In truth, God is not outside you but within. You are an aspect of God. Everything is universal energy. Everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies, and it does so in waveform. Fact, scientifically proven fact, although for me nothing can ever be straight line factual because of the existence of infinity. We could test it to infinity minus 1 times and always get one result. Yet the next flip of that coin, it could land the other way up, throwing the whole principle out the window. So it is going where it feels most guided. Staying in alignment with who you are, as to live as your truest self means that you are already living your greatest life. So I now have free artistic creatorship of the podcast, and I have still delivered it as a podcast, and I will be continuing upon that journey. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to have had the radio show, and I will one day again actually host a radio show, a live show where we bring guests on live, and it will actually stream potentially throughout the day, a mindfulness station. Yeah, at the moment it was more beneficial to stop focusing and watering that seed which was never going to grow or bear fruit, and to continue upon my own path in my own direction through my own free will. The ego accepted this because it has got to a point of understanding and knowledge that what I choose consciously is actually most beneficial for the subconscious and the ego itself. So the way I was shown it in the past is the ego is like an overprotective parent, an overprotective father. It will try to keep you safe through the limitation of enjoyment of things which are potentially dangerous. To jump off of a cliff may result in becoming injured. Jumping off into the water, though, not onto actual dry land. But if you've already swum, or you've already seen somebody else do it, if you've swum in the water, you know it's deep enough. If you've seen somebody else jump in and you've seen that they're safe, then you know, the ego knows that it is safe, but it will still try to prevent it. It will try to prevent you going into dark areas, because in the darkness we do not understand, or we cannot see what is there. And quite often, and especially working one-on-one with clients, we will get to a point where the ego will come in and slam the door, and it's only actually happened once, but somebody then, through all of their internal pain at me, condemning me, judging me, ridiculing me, trying to become more superior to me because they had given me the very root cause of their trauma, and then felt less than through showing me that. There is actually somebody else I work with that does this as well, that goes through a cycle of becoming very uplifted and very positive, and then dipping back into the poor me ego, and then actually pushing me away because they don't want me to see them in that state of being, because the ego needs to be superior, or at least equal. But we are all equal. There is no superiority, only the egoic perception or illusion of it. So, don't go out in that. Don't go out and have fun. Don't eat this, don't do that, etc., etc. This is what the ego will do to try to prevent you from experiencing things it does not understand or have control over. So it's compromise. I teach ego compromise, never ego death. If the ego feels you're trying to destroy it, then it will do all it can to cling on to its very existence. Anytime you exist in this present moment, you are separate from the ego. Certain things which are very beneficial for overcoming the ego, I will share in a moment. But first of all, allow me to actually explain how we go about compromising with the ego and what it actually uses as its form of sustenance, of its form of life-giving energy. The ego is part of you. Anytime that you cause separation, you cause internal issues, internal traumas. Just as a trauma in the past has been put in a box and hidden in the darkness because the subconscious mind is there to also protect and serve the body, and it does so in the way that it feels most beneficial. If there has been a traumatic event of old, it will take it, place it in the darkness, so there you don't have to experience it, you don't have to look at it. It is saving you from re-experiencing that trauma. In truth, it is actually separating part of you from the whole and causing separation issues. You will then go through life trying to complete yourself through all manner of events, whether it be with another person, by achieving certain things, by gaining certain statures in society, by presenting yourself in a certain way, by having nice things, etc., etc. These are all egoic desires. These are all forms of trying to complete yourself with something outside of yourself. This will never work. I went through this, I've experienced it all myself, which again is why I'm able to deliver all this information. I've done it all. I've lived it all. I've experienced it all, which is why I understand you. I am there for you as I have walked that path, and in truth, I am just another aspect of you. So the ego exists in the past or in the future, because neither of these actually exist. They are both illusions. But in truth, everything only exists, well, within this realm, within your mind. Think about it for a moment. This present moment is energy vibrating at different frequencies, which we process through our senses, and then it sends signals through our brain, to our brain, through the neurological pathways within our brain, and then we decide that that is a flower, that is a tree, that is a cloud, this is my hand. It's all a perception. And I'm not going to get into it too deeply now, but I will do an episode on the subconscious mind and the neurological pathways and how to actually go about rewiring your mind to remove any form of limitation of old, to break free from addictions or phobias or negative emotions, any form of limitation. It's what I do. It is what I do one-on-one with my clients, and it is incredibly powerful. So, the ego exists in the past or the future. And the ego's form of food is conscious energy. Whatever you are focused upon, you are directing your energy to. Whatever you focus upon, you grow. Okay? Focusing on the ego, or allowing the ego to have that form, that control of focus, means that it is flowing that energy through it and it is feeding it itself. Look at it as though it is a person, part of you. Every part of you is separate, but collectively creates the whole, just as every droplet of water is separate, but collectively makes the ocean, just as each one of us is separate, yet collectively makes the collective consciousness, not only of humanity, but of the universe, just as every leaf is separate, but makes up that ivy tree, that ivy plant, bush, that tree, that tree, that tree, that tree. If a single leaf falls, it does not actually affect the tree in completion, only if they all fall. And if only a single leaf is left, it has the potential to actually bring in that light and to turn it into the sustenance the tree requires, to then allow for it to sink and settle down into the root system so that it can get through even the harshest of experiences, the harshest of winters. Those of you that are doing the work, thank you. Because without you, there'd be nothing. We are in a time where we are being very tested, very separated. It is the completion of self which brings with it the completion of everybody else. Thank you. So, in my journey, in my experience, I was shown the ego as a mask, the egoic mask, and I was shown it always, not always, very often I'm shown energy as water and it must flow or it becomes stagnant, and various colours merging together and mixing to create new colours. I'm purple. It is all energetic, it is all a vibrational frequency, yet I have been shown it as colour to better understand it, and it is the way I will deliver it to you, so that you are able to also bring in this information in an easy to understand modern day context, modern day mindfulness, right? So if you're born, let's say you're born yellow, you like to be energetic, you like to dance, you like to sing. As a child, somebody wrongs you for being expressive, for being free, for being excited in your expression of self. You're told to be quiet, to sit down, to sit in the corner, to be seen and not heard. You desire the approval of your caregivers, your primary caregivers, more than anything else, because you actually require their protection in order to be able to survive initially, you need your parents for your very survival. You give yourself freely as a child, and you then desire that exchange back from your parents in an unconditional manner. But once there is conditions put upon it, there is a form of separation created, and that is what sparks the ego. So if you're born yellow, you're told to be more quiet, more thoughtful in your manner of expression, let's say. Then potentially you would take upon being blue. You're yellow, you place a mask of blue on and you become green. Green actually works, and green is a beautiful colour. It would be that you could then actually choose when to be expressive and when to be more controlled and thoughtful, but you would still have that freedom of expression. I, on the other hand, am purple, and I do not mix very well with any other frequency or colour other than purple. And this links into twin flames as well, so I will do another in-depth video on frequency and actual soul families, soul contracts, soulmates and twin flames, because it is all vibrational, harmonic, frequency match or ability to actually mix together. There is no two aspects of the self that are identical, other than the aspect of you that is you and the aspect of you that is the infinite. But on occasion they do actually come to material form and structure within the same life. But those occasions are not just to be experienced or enjoyed, they are to make those absolutely massive impacts and breakthroughs in a way that defies and changes the very history of the universe itself. So back to the ego and the colours. Being purple, I am very, very deep in my way of thinking. I feel very deeply. I am very connected to the earth and other people. To see somebody else in pain in the past used to cripple me and put me on my knees myself, because I would actually bring upon that pain. I would experience it as though it was my own. So I then was wronged for being the way that I am, for being so deep, for being so in tune, for being so soft. And I was told to be more of a man, to man up, to be harder, to be more cutthroat, more ruthless. So I then, through the desire to actually seek the approval and acceptance of my father, put on a mask of red. I became brown, muddied, polluted, and in truth unsure of who I really was. So not until I took off my mask, through actually accepting who I was and stopping or preventing the ego trying to please other people, to seek their approval as a way of feeling justified in being good enough or worthy of even existing. Not until I took off my mask and started to vibrate in my true self, started to be my true colour again, did I experience what life truly is. It's as though I was actually looking through new eyes, new lenses of perception, able to see the world in a completely new and unique way, in a way that was likened to the eyes of a child before there is those elements of separation and requirement to seek approval from outside themselves. It's all to do with self-acceptance. Through accepting yourself in completion, every event that you have experienced in the past, everything you have done or had done to you, by fully and completely accepting it all, only then will you be able to get to a point where you can break free from the ego, or the desire for the ego to actually seek approval from outside itself. Take off those layers of separation, take off those layers of illusion so that you can see clearly, breathe and talk freely and hear with a crispness that is outside of what you've previously experienced. silence. I actually did just stop the recording because I'm aware that it may be interfering, and I've sat here for about 10 minutes whilst there's a tiny little area of lawn being mowed, and my ego did start to actually get a little bit, how long is this going to be? Rain clouds are coming over now. What if it rains? What if? Anytime you give away your choice, your freedom of control, your freedom of creatorship, even to the elements, you're limiting yourself. What if it rains? Well, I'm going to get wet, aren't I? That's it. In truth, at the moment, I am actually returned from holiday and I'm sat in the garden. Each of these videos will be outside. I'm going to record them outside because there are many people that don't actually have the ability to ground to the depth of requirement. So viewing a video in nature is going to be beneficial. I've been asked by several people to do so, so it's what I'm doing. I'm sat in the garden because I have to self-isolate for 14 days because whilst I was away on holiday, Turkey got put on the quarantine list. Upon returning, nobody questioned us, nobody took the information, nobody told us anything. It's as though it doesn't exist. To me, the mockery is clear to see, and it is all about an egoic control and a seek to divide and conquer. But it only works if we are stuck in the ego. It only works if we believe ourselves to be separate. It only works if I sit here and think that me recording this video is more important than that man mowing his lawn. Nothing matters. Nothing is more important than the rest or the next. I am no better or worse than you. We are all individual aspects of the same self. We all have a different perception of the same situation, the same event. And by breaking free from the ego, we can see more clearly the truth to this. So upon breaking away from the ego, look at it like this. The ego will do all it can to keep control, to keep that energy flowing through it, because that is its form of sustenance. Likened to somebody who is overweight, obese, they require a certain amount of food before they feel full, yes? Just as the ego requires a certain amount of energy in order to feel sustained. Over time, by eating less and less, you require less and less to feel satisfied. This is the same with the ego. It will originally and initially do all it can to keep you in the past or the future. If you are stuck in the past, in a depressive state of being, as we discussed last week, then that is the ego keeping you there, bringing up past events when you weren't good enough so that you stay separated from the truth of who you are. Because by accepting yourself in completion, you break away from the ego's control. So the ego will do all it can to bring up where you're not good enough to stay in control. Upon realizing this and seeing it, it will start to quieten down. So treat the ego like a child, an aspect of yourself that is limited in its ability of understanding. It doesn't mean it's wrong, it's doing what it believes is necessary to keep you in a place of safety. To limit yourself is to keep yourself safe, because previously breaking out and expressing your truth, for myself anyway, brought upon a experience of trauma, to be actually ridiculed by that person that I seeked approval from more than anybody else. So then by keeping myself small, by keeping myself limited, I kept myself safe. The ego did, right? Watch it. Watch it like a child. If a child is misbehaving, as soon as you tell it off, it will dig its heels in and it will try to defy you. If you watch it and it knows that it is misbehaving, it will quieten down until you are not watching it, and then it will come back into ownership of what it is doing, freedom of choice. It may misbehave once again. The ego will bring up past events, past negative events. This will keep you in a place of egoic control. By watching it, by knowing that it is not you having these thoughts, that it is not you bringing them up, that it is part of you that is trying to actually control and defy your ability to break free and live your truest and greatest life, then you are actually going about separating from the ego. Knowing that it is separate to you but part of you. Knowing that they are not your thoughts, they are just happening within you. They do not define you or control you. They do not actually mean anything other than the experience of what it is. To think a negative thought is just to think a negative thought. To see a rain cloud is just to see a rain cloud. To see a beautiful ray of sunlight is just to see a beautiful ray of sunlight. Some are more desirable, some are more beneficial in the experience of, but they are just experiences nonetheless. So once you get to a point where the ego stops bringing up negative past events because it has realized that you can see it and you realize that it is separate to you and you can break free from it, it will then try to bring up past positive events. Past events that are positive will then trick you into believing that you are thinking about fond memories of old. But in truth, this is still the ego, because remember, the ego does not exist in the moment of now. The only time that is ever, or will ever be, is now. The gift of now, the gift of this present moment. And then upon realizing that this is still an egoic distraction or trick, and separating from that, it will look to the future with optimism and positivity. This still is the ego. I want to go forwards, to create. I want to control future outcomes and situations. This is more beneficial than looking to the past. Because remember, the present moment only exists now within your mind. The past is a memory of it which only exists in your mind, and the future is an interpretation or perception of it, a forward projection which only exists in the mind. To view a situation in the future which is potentially fearful or negative and then try to control it, this is egoic. You can't control something that is not taking place now. In truth, back to the ocean, you can't control the way that the currents flow, but you can enjoy being upon those waves and surfing them, enjoying the experience for what it is. You can't control every situation, but you can control your reaction to it, the way that you experience it, your perception of it. Bringing yourself with a single breath back into your heart center, back into your physical body, back into now. And then focusing on something outside of yourself, to reconnect the self to the external, to know that this blade of grass is not separate to me. It is another aspect of me. Your hand is a beautiful thing to use. Clouds are my favourite. To watch a cloud and to become the cloud and to float off, to allow those thoughts of negativity to dissipate, to float by. But even focusing on a single point, if you do it for long enough, you become that single point. It will actually start to move, to vibrate in a way that you've never experienced. This is because you are viewing it in a new way that you've never experienced. We can only actually process so much information per second. To look at my finger, I see it as a finger because there is so much more information going on. I accept it as my finger, and that is that. When I focus upon it for a longer period of time, just as though a single point of focus meditation, such as a flickering of a candle can do, it will start to actually vibrate because I'm seeing the entire aspect of my finger, not just the bits that my mind has taken for granted and placed in its perception or its database of information. Start to view the world in a new way when you break free from the ego and its defiance and control over you. So very useful ways of breaking free is, as I said, a single breath in and out to bring yourself back into the physical self and then back outside of the self, to actually give it an understanding of self and the knowledge that you are not trying to destroy it or remove it, that you are slowly reducing the energy that it requires to sustain itself, just as though a fat person is not being starved, they are just starting to actually reduce the intake of food until they don't require so much food to feel sustained. My ego exists with me in completion. But instead of being 18 stone of muscle and anger, trying to push everybody away to keep myself safe in case they got close enough to see my internal wounds and scars, my ego is now on my back, protecting me still, and it is there, and I give it freedom of reign for when it is most beneficial. If it comes forth in a situation which, after analysing, we collectively decide as the self that it is not most beneficial, then that will be marked down as a non-beneficial experience, and it will not react in that way within that situation in future. If we do not experience something, we do not understand what it is or what best way to respond or react to it. If you didn't experience the darkness, you wouldn't appreciate the light. If you hadn't have ever experienced fear and hatred, you wouldn't have a real understanding for what love is. It is bringing in completion all aspects of the self, including the egoic self, and a very powerful thing to do to start with. Say that you are trying to meditate and you sit and you meditate, and the ego is bringing up thoughts of the past and the future, things you need to do, people you need to ring or connect with or check in on, always things outside yourself. To make a deal with the ego, to compromise with the ego, because every relationship is compromise. Just as that overprotective father may compromise allowing their child to go out, they will do so only allowing them to go out to a certain point in the evening, not out all night, just till 10 o'clock. Egoic compromise. Give the ego full reign. Doing so for a certain period of time. So, okay, I'm going to meditate now, and after meditating you can have complete freedom for the rest of the day. You can do what you want. Just, I'm taking this time for myself. It will take that compromise. Instead of trying to be defied at every moment through the day, you are saying, I'm having this point and you can have the rest. And then you reduce that point of the day until you only give it an hour. And then change that hour to an hour when you're asleep. If you want to feel negative, if you want to feel victimized, if you want to feel poor me, if you want to feel anything separate to the creator being you are, allow it. Allow it to experience all those emotions, all those expressions of self, all those experiences, sensations, doing so between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to be aware of it anyway, so why not? It gives that part of yourself freedom. It will be happy to have that freedom, and you can then go about mindfully and consciously choosing what you do as opposed to running those old programs. Because remember, everything is a program. You were born blank. The information you experienced meant that you then installed various programs within yourself, within the subconscious mind. And you react in a pre-designated way, dependent on the external stimuli, dependent on which keys are pressed on that keyboard, means that the computer responds in a certain way. If you respond in a less than beneficial way, in a way that you do not desire or wish to go forward experiencing or reacting in, then that is where we come about in the reprogramming of the subconscious mind. Again, this is what I do with a very, very powerful and unique ability that I have been gifted, and I still don't know. I don't know how I'm able to do what I do. I don't know how I'm able to get to the very root cause so specifically and with such ease and remove it. Literally setting people free from limitations that have affected them for 30 or 40 years, if not more sometimes. I'm gifted. It is an honour, it truly is. I'm only able to do this because I have cleared my own vessel. I have cleaned myself, purified myself, cleaned that vessel. Because likened to a cup, is the cup half full or half empty? Is the cup half full or half empty? I'll tell you what, I'll give you the answer to that question in next week's episode. to ensure that you have more of a desire to come back and watch it. Because next week we will start on those 5 steps to freedom, with acknowledgement being the first step. Maybe actually incorporating acknowledgement and acceptance into the same episode, because they are very heavily interlinked. Once again, you have to accept something in completion to be able to then gain all the information, all the wisdom, all the knowledge, all the learnings from it. And you have to acknowledge something as blocking your path in order to be able to move around it. Otherwise you're just going to become stuck. So, fill yourself first and then overflow to everybody else. Bring in that clean, universal, pranic life force energy from the heavens above and flow it freely through you to those around you. You become full yourself and you benefit everybody else. If your vessel is dirty, is impure, has damage to it, traumas inside, then everything you bring through you is becoming dirtied and impure itself. The information that you pass through you is not going to be most beneficial to those receiving it. It's going to be putrid or actually affected negatively by the information stored within yourself. Just like a cup that's dirty, you put water in the cup dirties the water. The person drinking the water is then drinking dirty water. Clean yourself. But know that it is an eternal journey, and that whilst we are here on Earth School, the learnings will never be complete. And once they are, you'll no longer be here. It's that simple. You will continue this journey until the very end. So it depends on how many times around that you wish to experience the same situations before you have had enough, and then go about looking and learning of how to overcome them. Watching this video, it's clear to me that that is the journey you are on, and that you are seeking the information required to break yourself free from limitations of old. So thank you. And once again, although these videos are being filmed in a specific situation and on a specific topic, with last week's being depression, the first week being fear and then introduction, and this week being the ego, I very often go slightly off track because of the guidance and the information which is then channeled through me to deliver to you. So another over half an hour episode, not just on the ego, but on a wide range of topics, all connected to the ego and the ability to live as your greatest version by simply living as your truest self. Stop trying to please other people. Learn self-acceptance and then self-love. And only then will you be able to actually accept and love another person. Once you become your own true love, your own sense of completion, of satisfaction, of inspiration, then you don't require anything from outside yourself. I am my own source of inspiration. I inspire myself. And I'm here to inspire you, or to empower you to inspire yourself. So if you have not yet done so, again, please subscribe to the channel. Head over to greatestversion.club, where we have all of our courses housed, some very, very powerful and expansive and life-changing courses, dependent on where you are on your journey. There's some free courses, some taster courses, which then lead on to the actual more expansive versions. Anxiety Freedom, leading on to the 5 steps to freedom and personal empowerment. How to raise your vibration, leading on to the energy mastery course. And also we have actually used the how to raise your vibration to then lead on to 7 weeks to enlightenment. That course is like nothing ever created. It takes you from the very start to the very completion of your journey towards inner completion, unity one consciousness, so that you can then experience that state of enlightenment. And there's also the abundance course and the grounding into the power of now course, both very powerful but more beginner level courses. So wherever you are upon your journey, there is a course for you to take, and I strongly urge and suggest that you do so now, because there's never been a more important time to gain that information, to invest within yourself, to align yourself to your true self, to vibrate at that being of worth and infinite potential, so you can then attract that to you from around you. The truth, the law of attraction, how to manifest your abundance, I would actually suggest that you start there, because it is a very easily accessible course, very easy to understand, very easy to utilize information, and then move forward from that point. Learn to walk before you run. Sometimes it's more beneficial to jump straight in. Other times we require a couple of steps forward, or to dip our toe in to test the water before we jump or dive headfirst into the depths. Thank you for who you are and everything you do. Please like, subscribe and share this video with anybody it may benefit, as we are at a point now within the collective where we are on the edge of that bubble to the other side, to then start the charity. Everything I'm doing is working towards, moving towards the creation of our charity, to then deliver and to lay the foundations to build upon for a world of true equality. Once my first book is complete and published, it will go to funding the second book, and that will go to funding the charity. All proceeds will go to funding the charity. When we get to that point, we can then start to globally affect the collective consciousness of humanity, to do the work required to bring balance back to the equation, as those which wish to seek, those which trying their very best to divide us, to conquer us through fear, through the illusion of separation. They are doing so because they are in a state of fear, because they know that we are awakening, and they will do all they can to prevent this. Yet the more that you focus on something and try to prevent it, the more you actually feed it. So focus on the light, focus on the love that you are, feed and grow that. Let them do whatever they're doing. They don't affect you. You control you. You experience your emotions. Your sense of self is internalized. It all comes from you, starts from you, and ends with you. And remember, without you, the universe would not exist for you to experience. So you are the most important being to have ever, or that will ever, live. I love you. I thank you. Now and forever, we are in this together. United we stand, and together we rise. Head over to the website, become a patron to the cause, and in doing so I will send you a multitude of gifts to express my gratitude in return for your support. I'm with you all the way, as we are eternally leading each other back home to the infinite aspect of self. And until next time, until next week, where we will begin the 5 steps to freedom. Namaste.